It's BBC Radio 1Xtra, and I'm absolutely delighted via Zoom to be hooking up a link with the Young Israelites band, of whom I am a big fan. I've been championing their music because, frankly, I couldn't believe what they created. I know their heads are probably swelling. I'm not even going to look at them on the video, on the Zoom connection right now, because they're over going, oh, okay. No, seriously. They are an amazing band, and the music they've created is quite unique. And as I say, I'm really chuffed to be speaking to them. Nate, Tal and Tristan, welcome to BBC Radio 1Xtra.
Yes.
Woohoo! Happy to be here.
Gentlemen, how does a three-man band achieve such a full sound? And how did you make it sound like it's an analog recording? I mean, this is one of the special qualities about your music, in my opinion, apart from the songwriting skill and so on. But how did you achieve this analog sound?
So, well, there's a few steps to making it sound analog. We usually get into the studio, me, Tal, and Tristan, and we lay down the basic track where I'm playing guitar, bass, and drums all together. No click, you know, like in the old days, we don't have the BPM going. So to make it sound more fluid and more of a lively sound, more glued together. And we record everything with ribbon mics and all kinds of vintage microphones. I think Tal could tell you about this because he's more the technical engineer of our band.
You know, one way of getting a vintage analog sound, for example, how they do it in Dapton, they have an absolutely amazing sound and gear, is to actually go to tape and to use like the real vintage mixers and all of that. But these things are very, very expensive, and we are, of course, an independent band. So we just decided, especially after coming back from Jamaica and working a little bit with Earl Chino Smith and seeing how he produced songs. So we tried to take the production elements rather than using the actual vintage gear. And apparently it's a big part of the magic of the old school music to do as little editing as possible and to treat the production, even though we have a computer and we have a lot of possibilities, just to keep things as simple as possible and use as little editing as we can and to do as much as live recordings as we can.
Well, let's hear another track from the brand new, the debut album, Endlessly, which will perfectly reflect everything you've just said about how you've achieved the sound. This is the Young Israelites with Can't Get Enough.
I push my need for love under the rug, but then you came like an angel from above. It's so nice when you're around, I can't get enough of your love, girl. The moment that you lay your eyes on me, things I kept in my heart come running free. I can't wait to make you mine. I'll never get enough of your love, girl. Easily take me, always stuck in my mind, no matter what I do. Dreaming one day you'll see love is something we should share, just me and you.
David Rodigan.
On One Extra.
Can't get enough by the Young Israelites, my special guest via Zoom in Israel. Whereabouts in Israel are you, gentlemen?
We're all living in Tel Aviv, or close to Tel Aviv.
So how did you, as a group, come together? Where was the fusion? How did it happen?
We all met about 7 years ago. We started playing together with an Israeli-Jamaican singer called Tony Ray. He's a very interesting character. He moved from Jamaica to Israel when he was about 20 years old, back in the 70s. And he's actually the first Jamaican to make a Hebrew reggae album in Israel. So we used to be his backing band. And about 4 years ago, we got an opportunity to come perform in the Grill in the Stepping High Ganja Festival. And eventually that led us to get to China's house in Kingston. And when we were there and just jamming out, China came out of his bedroom and he took a listen and he said, "Wow, you guys sound good. I'd love to do something with you guys in a few days if you're gonna be here." And we'd never actually recorded anything together as a band before that. We were just Tony Ray's backing band. So
That was like 7 years ago.
no, that was actually 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Tristan, please tell me, how did you and the rest of the guys get into early Jamaican reggae and rocksteady when you weren't even born when they were making this music in Jamaica? How did you get into it, Tristan?
Wow, actually, I'm listening to reggae since I was like a baby. My father is originally from the Caribbean, from the Curacao. So he also a musician. So when he came to Israel, he performed all over Israel and with the reggae music. Most of the songs was covers. Since I was little, I was listening to reggae music, was in the shows and all of that.
Tell us, Nate, how did
Yeah.
you get into it? Nate is the lead singer, by the way, listeners.
It was always around. I had many friends. My guitar teacher was in a reggae band in Israel. So it was pretty natural. I just started listening to Bob Marley, fell in love, listened to all of his albums, and gradually got into more modern stuff, into Chronix, Capleton, Sizzla. And after a while, I was experimenting with stuff and I was trying to sound like Sizzla for a while.
Oh, really? That's interesting. And how did that work out?
Not very well.
You decided you'd be your own man, so to speak, and sing in the way that you do, and I'm sure the other band members will agree. You do have a very unique voice, as we're about to hear on Please Don't Ever Let Me Go.
BBC Radio 1 Extra.
It isn't hard to see. Only your love could save me. No matter what I do, the only thing I think about is you. So please, don't ever let me go. I need you more than ever. I'd be sad if you should go. Don't leave me on my own. I remember our first kiss. We didn't need to play no tricks. Feel like a glove inside my hand. It wasn't hard to understand each other. When I said that I love you, you told it to me back. I'd be too lonely without you, and you always have my back. So please, don't ever let me go. I need you more than ever. I'd be sad if you should go. Don't leave me on my own. 'cause I need you, girl, need you now. More than
Please Don't Ever Let Me Go by the Young Israelites. Their brand new album, Endlessly, is now out, and I've been championing some of their songs since I first heard them. Gentlemen, who are your influences? I mean, obviously, Nate, you mentioned Sizzler and Chronics and so on. Who do you particularly like from the sound of now and also from back in the day? Let's start with the stuff that you were really crazy about when you first heard this music, apart from, obviously, Bob Marley. Is there any particular sound of that? A rock steady, early reggae? Any particular producers or artists that you really honed in on? Tristan?
Rocksteady, of course, the legends.
The Paragons, we really like the Paragons. Every show we have, we play Left with a Broken Heart from
Really?
the Paragons.
Yes.
We used
one
to
of
finish our show before we had like enough songs to make an actual full show. We used to finish like Left with a broken palm, and each show someone would ask, what is this amazing song? And we had to look down and say, it's a cover, man, it's your favorite song from the show, but it's a cover.
It's an amazing song, though, isn't it, that Paragon song? The Paragons were just incredible.
Alton Ellis is definitely my favorite rocksteady artist. He's like the Beatles of the rocksteady. He's like so many big hits. He's incredible. And even like songwriting wise, I take so much from Alton Ellis. He's truly the king of rocksteady.
So how was this album made and where was it made?
It's actually a funny story. The first half of the album we made during Corona times, and we didn't have a studio back then. So my uncle has a wedding venue that was closed off for Corona. So we just camped inside the wedding venue for 2 weeks, brought all of our equipment.
That's amazing. You made full use of the coronavirus lockdown.
Yeah. And the other half of the album, we finally got a really nice studio lately, about a year ago. And it's actually a war bunker somewhere in north of Tel Aviv. And it's very cheap because the government lets you have it for very cheap. And we've recorded many new songs there, and it's our own little space. Really nice.
Let's hear another track from the album, Why Don't You Take?
Why don't you take my heart, girl, and break it to smithereens? I thought you were my love, girl. Now I see it was all in my dreams. Crush me, 'cause you're my one and only. Just be careful. Don't step on me too hard. Don't be cruel, little girl. When you decide to crush me, 'cause you're my one and only. Just be careful.
The Young Israelites, via Zoom from Tel Aviv in Israel, the Young Israelites band, three-man band, and they've made some amazing music, all collected on their debut album, which is called Endlessly. You were talking about where the sort of war bunkers and old wedding venues. How does the songwriting procedure, how does that happen?
I grew up in the States, in the US, when I was younger. I was born in Tel Aviv, but when I was a year old, I moved to New York for a few years. And then when I was like in second grade, I moved for a few years to Houston, Texas. So that's kind of where I get my English from.
Okay.
That's why the English songwriting comes more natural to me. Usually what happens, I write a few songs, we bring them to the studio and we think of like an arrangement together. And then we think of the parts together. Tristan adds some percussion. I do some overdub of some piano and other guitars, and we do some back vocals together. So it's a real band thing.
Tal, you mentioned earlier on that when it comes to all the wizardry of sound and engineering, he's the real specialist. Who have you been influenced by, perhaps, or who have you admired? Because I've always said that engineers and the technique of recording is so very important. You described how you achieved your sound earlier on in our interview. Without the great engineers, and there are some great engineers, of course, from Jamaica, apart from the obvious ones like King Tubby and Lee Perry is a great engineer, Sylvan Morris at Harry J, Sidney Buckner and so forth. Whose work have you particularly admired, and who have you been aware of in terms of an engineer and all the skills required by an engineer as you've grown to love the music?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer like a lot before I came across reggae music and rocksteady music. Actually, my main influences are Glyn Jones, for example, for Led Zeppelin and Steve Albini. But when I got into reggae, I actually understood that there is a deep connection between where I came from, which is punk rock and all the Clash first album and of course Sex Pistols and all that. And I came to discover that, the punky reggae party is actually a thing. And the sound, Lee Perry produced a song on the Clash debut album. And of course, everything that happened with Don Letts and all of these things. So apparently, like recording and producing a good punk album is pretty similar to producing a reggae album. And of course, I absolutely love Lee Perry. I think my favorite album is the first Congos album, Heart of the Congo.
Incredible.
It's just a masterpiece. And of course, King Tubby. And sometimes it's hard to see who were the engineers because you buy a 7-inch from a store and it's all white and you just listen and you can't really know who did it. My influences are from a wide range of genres, and I think also the engineers of Motown, of course, is a big influence. I know it influenced a lot of Jamaica in the 60s and 70s.
Okay, let's hear Don't Want to See You Again.
One extra.
David Rodigan, David Rodigan, David Rodigan, David Rodigan, David Rodigan, David Rodigan.
I don't wanna see you again. Better if we're no longer friends. I've
I'm talking to Nate and Tal and Tristan at their base camp in Tel Aviv in Israel. They are the Young Israelites band, and they're very proud to have a debut album, and I'm very proud to play my part in endorsing it because I think it's just so cool, and it's a real pleasure to meet you via Zoom for the first time. Gentlemen, before we play the last song from the album, which is Anna, what are your most memorable reggae happenings and festivals? Nate, you go first.
Well, we had a really, really special moment a few months ago. We did our first European festival ever in Rotterdam, Sunsplash, and it was an incredible, incredible experience. And the cherry on top of that experience was actually reuniting with Elchina Smith in the festival.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was such an amazing moment. So we had backstage access, but not to all the way inside. So we had to wait in some gate, and hopefully he would see us and maybe he would let us in. It all kind of seemed sketchy, but we were there and we were waiting for his show of Sly Dunbar to finish. And when he came up to the gate and he was like, "Oh, Nate, my Israel family, come on, let him pass."
Doesn't get much better than that, or does it?
By the way, talking about Left with a Broken Heart, we actually did a rendition with Earl China. We posted it on our Instagram where he sings the lead vocal and we do the backing vocals. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll have to check that out. I'm sure our listeners will as well. Tal, a final thought from you on what's been most memorable in terms of what you've achieved in the last few years.
First of all, of course, the first big moment for me was playing in your show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It was a big moment for us, and I think because it basically started only as a project for each one of us. We recorded the songs before we even performed with them. We just decided, okay, we came back from Jamaica, it influenced each one of us very deeply, so let's do an EP together. And then all of a sudden you promoted it on your show and it changed everything. It changed everything.
It gave spark to the band in a different level.
Yeah, it's true. Thank you so much for it.
That's wonderful. And that just goes to show the power of the BBC. The BBC can be heard anywhere in the world, or as long as you've got a connection. And we do know that lots of people listen to this show around the world, thanks to the internet and thanks to BBC Sounds. Got to plug the BBC Sounds app. If you haven't got it downloaded to your smartphone or to your laptop, you need to do that. And you can literally hear the BBC anywhere. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. We wish you every success with the album. So until we see you perhaps in the UK in the not too distant future, next summer, we wish you every success. Young Israelites, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Anna, you come and ask me, girl, to set you free, girl. You say he loves you more than me, so I will set you free. Go with him. Go with him. Anna, girl, before you go now, I want you to know now that I still love you so, and if he loves you more, go with him. Go with him. You can go with him, girl. Go with him. Go with him.
Thank you so much, the Young Israelites. And thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Back next Sunday, Christmas lunch between 1